Hey everyone, David Safransky, your host of Financial Revelations, back after a week off. Not because of me. I was here. Corey was selfish and she took a vacation. So if you have a bone to pick it with Corey. I know you probably missed my information from last week, but it's okay. There wasn't a lot of data last week, but there is a lot of data this week, and we'll get to that in a minute. You could see me at a workshop coming up Tuesday, April 16th. We still have a few spots open. 6 p.m., Elyria, Ohio. Managing money in an election year, $15 a person. 100% goes to the Amazon fund. You can see about the Amazon and what we do there on nativosusa.org. It's all running down here. Questions you can email to Corey at epsf.com. And you can always call us, 1-800-344-2534. I'm on WCRF 103.3 every Thursday morning from 8 to 9. And you can, if you download the Moody Radio App, you can listen from anywhere. And apparently I'm going to be on in Nashville now too. So that's kind of exciting. I don't know if that makes me syndicated or not. Nah, it doesn't really. But I want you to come to the workshop. So if you were kind of on the fence, get off the fence and call in and make a reservation, 1-800-344-2534. I'll have some cookies and things like that there. The girls are going to smell everyone's armpits on the way in because people are avoiding deodorant because it's so expensive. Inflation is really high. If you've gone to the grocery store and bought anything in the last 3 years, you know that inflation is really high. And why did it happen in the last 3 years? Well, because Joe Biden took over as president. Notice I didn't say he got elected. He took over as president, and they have engineered an inflationary economy. And you know, somebody, Chair Powell is in a total box right now. And I've been telling you this for a while, but this week, so Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, economic data came out. CPI, core CPI, and non-core CPI came out. And it's hot. It's higher than what we thought. 4 months in a row now, we have accelerating inflationary data. Now, today, Thursday, the producer price index came out, and it was a little tamer than what people thought it was going to be. And that's a decent sign. The problem is with that PPI is that it only caught 1 month of the increased fuel prices. CPI is going to be even hotter next month. It's going to be even hotter next month because of fuel prices. And Chair Powell is just caught in a box right now. He doesn't know, ideally when we first came into the year, we thought, the market, people in the market thought that there was going to be 6 or 7 rate cuts this year. But, the market is coming to grips with what you already knew. You already knew that there weren't going to be 6 or 7 rate cuts this year because you listen to this podcast or you hear me on the radio or you've sat in my office or something along those lines. We've communicated, there might be 1 rate cut this year. There might be. I don't think it's going to be in June. I don't think it's going to be in July or August. I think those meetings are off the table. Those are no longer live meetings. It's not going to happen. It can't happen. We have increasing inflation. How could they cut rates if the economic data is real? Oh, I know what came out last week was the employment report. And the employment report showed a growth of 300,000 jobs, 100,000 of which were government jobs. So the government added almost 100,000 people to the employment rolls. 100,000 people in 1 month of government. That's not a good sign. The other thing that was really bad about the employment report is that we net loss of 6,000 full-time jobs. So that means the employment report was a part-time jobs report. It's just part-time jobs are getting added. That's a horrible sign for your economy because it's dumping the healthcare costs on the exchanges. If you work part-time, you don't get healthcare. So this is not This is a house of cards that we're building on right now. That was not a good report. We do not want to see that report. What we want to see is government jobs dropping, private sector jobs rising, and full-time jobs rising. We got the opposite. It's the exact opposite of what we want to see. These are not good things. This is the sign of weakness, not strength. And I want people to work. I want people to have career-type positions if they want them. This was not that. So because you watch this podcast or you listen to it, you knew that they weren't going to do 6 or 7 rate cuts this year. And you also know that Chair Powell is in a box. Totally in a box. What's he going to do? Here's what I think is happening. I think the ghost of Paul Volcker is now rampantly running around the halls of Fed Central in Washington, D.C., screaming, dump us into a recession. Paul Volcker was the Fed chairman under Ronald Reagan, came in I think, 79 or 80. And the Fed is supposed to be independent of the executive branch. They're supposed to be independent, political appointee, confirmed by the Senate, but independent of the president. They don't necessarily act in the best interest of the president. They don't. They act in the best interest of the economy. But they meet from time to time. And they'll do it secretly. They don't publicize these meetings or talk about what they talked about. But Paul Volcker and Ronald Reagan would argue with each other in meetings because Paul Volcker wanted to drive us into a recession to get prices down and to stem inflation. And Ronald Reagan didn't want to do that, but he realized that, okay, we got to do it. So what's the least amount of damage we can cause? And Paul Volcker drove interest rates up to 14%. I don't think we're there now, but if we don't do something soon, we could be headed in that direction. I don't want to scare people. I don't want to scare people, but we have this persistent inflation. And what the Biden administration is finding out is that to go from 9% inflation to 5% was pretty easy. It's that last 3% that's going to be really, really tough because those prices are embedded. When we joke about deodorant, but deodorant's really expensive. Grapes are $9 for a thing of grapes. $9 for grapes. So what do people do? Well, if you're on the economic margin, you're in real trouble. You're not buying that stuff. Now, hopefully you're buying things like toilet paper and deodorant, but you're putting other things back. There's no doubt that your cart is smaller. These things are real. And I think what's going to happen, in some sense, we're going to have to slow the economy down more. We're going to have to get an increase in unemployment. We had for a long time thought, the Fed threaded the needle. This is great. They didn't. They did not thread the needle. They missed the mark. They're missing the mark. Could it still happen? Yeah, I suppose it could still happen, but I don't think it is now. When you have January, February, March, April, all hot numbers increasing, I think next month's CPI is going to be even hotter. At some point, you just have to deal with the reality of the fact that they missed. And they got too cute by half. That's what I mean. They missed. Maybe if we do this, maybe if we tweak this, maybe the economy will play along. Well, fuel prices aren't playing along. We got wars in Israel. We got a war in Ukraine. It's driving fuel prices up. There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And the Biden administration has killed LNG exports. Europe needs that. Europe needs our gas. If they don't get our gas, they're going to go back to Russia. We're still buying fuel from Russia. We're allowing Russia to sell fuel on the open market. By doing that, we're financing the war in Ukraine, all while trying to, they had a peace deal in Ukraine. Zelensky wanted a peace deal in Ukraine, and the Biden administration sent Boris Johnson, the former Prime Minister of England, there to tell him, no, you're not doing a peace deal. They had a peace deal. How many people have died in Ukraine as a result? How much, it's pretty easy for us, for the Biden administration, to demand that they fight Russia when we're not sending our troops. And we're not going to, there's no way that people in America are going to stand for our troops going to Ukraine. Last week they came out and they said Ukraine's going to be part of NATO. And if that were to happen right now, we would go to war with Russia. We don't want to do that. Russia doesn't want to do that. Ukraine doesn't want to do that. Ay, ay, ay. This is what people voted for. That's why you're going to see a market that's really prepared for a change in November. And I think we know who the candidates are. It's going to be Donald Trump and most likely Joe Biden. That's still up in the air, but it's most likely going to be that, and Donald Trump is going to win the election. This economic team that we have in the White House right now is quite possibly the dumbest economic team ever. And prices are never going to go back to where they were before this inflation started. That ship has sailed. The way inflation works is you had 7% inflation in 2022. You had 9% inflation in 2023. And you have about 5.5% inflation in 2024. These things are cumulative. I heard somebody from the Biden administration say, well, there's a big disconnect between what's actually happening in the economy and with people because they don't realize that inflation is going down. And I thought, no, inflation is not going down. It's just rising at a slower pace. But it's still rising. And that pace is picking up. So there's not going to be 6 or 7 rate cuts this year. There might not even be 1 rate cut this year. And that's the reset that you're seeing in the market right now. Be ready to buy it. I'm letting things shake out a little bit. I'm ready to buy it soon. In fact, I was out for lunch, and on the way back, I had a quick call with a client that we're ready to start picking off some really good opportunities. I'm going to let the market shake out a little bit. You don't need to be in a hurry. Don't get any FOMO. There's a little bit of time. I want to get to some listener questions, and they're inflation questions. They're, what do I think of gold, and what's my favorite precious metal? And what do I think of gold? Well, gold has hit some all-time highs recently, and I'd like to think that's going to end at when we get a new administration here that is going to drive down inflation. People always ask me what my favorite precious metal is. It's actually not gold. I like to joke and say it's brass because it fits into a 9mm really nice. And as we get into this election season, there's going to be the left is not going to allow Donald Trump to have the nomination and quite possibly the presidency without throwing a fit. If you remember the riots, the burning of cities, that's going to happen. I think it's wise to own a firearm. I think it's quintessentially American to own a firearm and know how to fire it, know how to be safe with it, get some training with it. Safety is, you don't get a second chance if you're unsafe with a gun sometimes. So learn how to be safe with it. My favorite precious metal is actually industrial metals because I think the economy will start growing again like a capitalist economy and not a government intervention economy. I think that's going to happen. So gold is not my favorite, but silver, platinum, palladium, those are metals that you could own. Don't make it 25% of your portfolio. Make it 5 to 7%. That's where I'm at. How do you? The next question is, how am I getting ready for the election? Well, I'm going to vote, for one thing. The second thing that I'm doing is I'm preparing for a little bit of a dislocation, if it's a momentary dislocation when Donald Trump wins the election, because there's going to be weeping and gnashing of teeth from the left. I mean, it's already started. They're already talking about Russiagate again, which was proven to be false, but they can't let these things die. Have some food. Have some water. You could last... Most Americans could last a long time without food. It's not going to kill you, but you can't last a long time without water. I would have about a week's worth of water in your house stored. I think that's a wise thing. I'm not being foolish. I'm not telling you to buy a bunker in the middle of nowhere that you can go to. I don't want to scare people, but I want to be prepared. I think we should be prepared. If we had a major storm, you might need a week's worth of water. Okay, we've seen this before where Superstorm Sandy, people went a couple of weeks without water. Have some water. I don't want to be a doomsdayer. I don't think doomsday is coming, but I remember what was happening in cities because the left couldn't handle Donald Trump's presidency. And these things were financed. You look and you see pre-positioned pallets of bricks to throw. Well, don't think that that's not going to happen again. And I remember people would say, well, look at the chaos that Donald Trump brings with them. It wasn't Donald Trump. These things were planned by the left, and we got to be ready for them. I want to give a shout out to my friend Fred in Honduras. He's living in the warmth and living by the ocean. Hope things are going well with you, Fred. And I want to let you know that if you have questions, concerns, you can call us. You can come in here. You don't have to work with us. There's no requirement that you work with us. Now, if you say, well, what's it cost? It costs nothing, okay? But if you wanted to make a donation to the Amazon Fund, we're not going to turn it away. So I think that's fair, okay? I want to send people to the Amazon so they get to experience it. Not everybody can afford to go. We make that happen. I want you to be part of it too. If you'd like to go, the trip in June is probably too late. It is too late. So you're not going to go in June, but you can go on the next one, and we can kind of decide when we go within reason. The church has other things that they do, so they can't just drop everything that they're doing and go on a trip for us. But we have some flexibility there, and we don't have to drill a well every time we go. We could go to a village and minister. We could spend 3, 4, 5 days in a couple of villages. If you have a church that wants to take a team, the team is usually 10 to 12 people, maybe a little bit more. If we're not drilling a well, we could take more people with us because we don't need as many Brazilians. And we can minister in villages. There's always interpreters available. You can speak with the people in the village. You could be part of it. I like to do trips like that too, because the gospel is the reason we're there. Water's important. It's critical. Clean water is really critical because people die from dirty water all the time, and they do in the Amazon. They get very sick from it. So we provide clean water. We provide the gospel. I want you to go, I am David Safransky, a real American, a true red-blooded patriot, and the voice you can trust.